Hello friends, welcome to my channel Creating Essence. I am Megan and thank you so much for stopping by today. Today I wanted to share a little bit with you about what led us to our pretty wholesome, clean eating, mostly paleo kind of lifestyle. Right off the bat, I want to explain what we consider clean eating because there are a lot of ways to use that term. There's no sort of standard, it's just something that's kind of thrown around a lot. To us, that means that we really try to eat preservative-free, fresh food, very limited and preferably none refined sugars, and no dyes. We also try to eat soy-free. We do make some exceptions with naturally fermented soy, but we don't eat unfermented soy products like edamame, tofu, TVP, and we really try to stay away from anything that has soy preservatives in it, soy lecithin and other kind of preservatives and emulsifiers. As for what led us there, our first was born. It took us about 4 months, me constantly telling the pediatrician something's wrong, her skin should not look like this, and him basically telling me, you're an idiot, babies have funny looking skin sometimes. Where I finally figured out by myself from tracking my diet, because she was still exclusively breastfed, she was allergic to soy and peanuts. She really taught me how to read labels. I had no idea there was so much soy in everything. Thankfully, with a diet clean of those triggers, she outgrew her allergy by the time she was 3, and today she really can eat whatever she wants. And we lived very, very low income at that time, so a lot of our food consisted of what people think of as low income food. We ate the ramen, canned soups, hot dogs, white bread, you name it, that was our diet because it was the bottom of the barrel and what we could afford. I had a little foray into the allergy mom scene with our first, and then with our second, he was born allergic to dairy protein. I could have all the butter I wanted because that was fat and lactose, but any kind of dairy protein and he was projectile vomiting within hours. Same song, different dance. Thankfully, our third didn't have any allergies. I had a really difficult pregnancy with our 4th child. By the time I was 5 weeks pregnant, I was sick all day, every day, could not keep anything down. By 7 weeks, my midwife had seen me and diagnosed me with hyperemesis gravidarum, which is profound morning sickness. It really is all day sickness where you're not only terribly nauseous, but you can't keep anything, not even water, down. Like nothing stays down. By the time I was 11 weeks, I had lost 15 pounds. So she put me on a medication called Zofran. Zofran is a medication for, originally made for chemotherapy patients. And what it does is it slows down the digestive tract so that for whatever reason, it makes you kind of not be able to vomit. You are still really nauseous, but you can't vomit or vomit as much. So your body can keep some nutrients in. It has a lot of really terrible side effects, as I'm sure you can imagine, with it really slowing down the digestive tract. I'll leave that to your imagination. But I was on that from 11 to 25 weeks with him. And around 35 weeks, we started having some concerns about possible IUGR, which is intrauterine growth restriction, meaning for whatever reason, the baby's just not growing right. At 35 weeks, he measured about 3 pounds on the ultrasound. So my midwife put me on a really heavy duty variety of food sourced insanely high quality, like you can't get better, kind of supplements, like food source everything so my body could just absorb it and get me and the baby the best, most potent nutrients possible. I was eating kale like it was my job. And when he was born at 38 weeks, not only did he not have IUGR, he was 9.5 pounds. So the ultrasound was wrong. But I'm really grateful for those really intense nutrients that we were just pumping into my body and to his body for those last few weeks because of what was to come. I did a home birth tag about his birth. I will post that in an iCard above if you want to check it out. But when he was born, he was healthy, he was happy. We noticed right away that there were some food sensitivities with him, like cocoa and different things. Chocolate was the one thing we knew for sure, because when I would eat chocolate, he would get very, very upset stomach. And it wasn't the normal baby gassiness, like been there, done that. He was my 4th kid. But he would like pull his hair out. He would just lay there and cry and grip the hair at the back of his head, and just, he was in agony. But chocolate was the one thing that we could make a connection to, so I went chocolate free. No big deal. I figured I'd done soy and peanuts and dairy, like chocolate, that stinks, but I can totally do that. Well, we just had this sense, despite him being a beefcake, that he just felt vulnerable, like something wasn't quite right. And neither my husband nor I could put a finger on it, because he was such a robust baby. And then because we had him at home, there were no vaccines at birth or anything like that. We took him to the pediatrician for checkups right away afterward, but he didn't have his first shots until 6 weeks. And a couple days later, we noticed one day that he was just sleeping all day long. And then we noticed he was kind of blue around his mouth. We just kept a really close eye on him. Thankfully, my husband was home because it was Memorial Day weekend. So he was home from work an extra day, and we just pretty much held him and watched him. And then that night, something just woke us up. We didn't even know what it was, but we looked at him and he was awake, but he was blue. He was not breathing. Like, he was just laying there not breathing. And I don't know what woke me and my husband up other than to say that it was God, because he wasn't making any noise. And I picked him up and honestly just like screamed in his face, and something gave him a startle reflex, and he gasped in, and then he started breathing again. I know, we were just terrified. We sat up watching him, and about 10 minutes later, he did it again. He was wide awake and just staring at us, cute as can be, and then he just exhaled and then did an inhale and just sat there and got bluer and bluer and then gray. And the second time he did it, we called 911. We did get him breathing again the same way, but it was a lot harder that time to get his startle reflex. And we got in an ambulance at 2 o'clock in the morning and went to the pediatric. We spent 4 days there. Every time we mentioned anything about a vaccine, it was instantly dismissed. Like, no, nothing to do with vaccines. But they couldn't tell us what. They just kept running all these tests, blood and swabs, and monitoring him around the clock. And the poor thing, just his belly was distended, and he just slept constantly, and he was just a mess. We were discharged after 4 days from the hospital, and he was diagnosed with ALTA, A-L-T-E, acute life-threatening events, which is a label for your kid's body repeatedly tried to die, but he didn't. We don't know why. That was terrifying. I kind of stopped sleeping for a long time and just stared at my kid around the clock. His breathing got really, really loud and like horrible sounding, like croup constantly, but on the inhale and the exhale. And when he was born, we knew he had a higher palate than normal. The doctor called it a bubble palate, which means it's super high and concave, but it's not quite a cleft palate because there's no split. They looked in depth at his upper airways and they said he has what's called laryngomalacia, which means a really floppy upper airway. It just hasn't calcified yet or didn't calcify properly. They said he would probably grow out of it because it would mature with time, but we had to keep him almost upright to sleep. Thank God for the rock and play. Because if he was laying back all the way, his airway would collapse. So from 2 to about 6 months, we dealt with a lot of that. Every time he would get a shot, like any vaccine, within about 48 hours, would break out in petechiae all over his arms and legs, and some of it started to spread up his neck and down his belly. Petechiae is burst blood vessels under the skin. The first time it happened, we rushed to the pediatrician, and she looked him all over, could not find anything wrong with him, and sent us straight to the lab to get blood samples. We did a full CBC and a blood panel. Everything was perfectly normal except slightly higher than normal white blood cell counts. And everything, it ended up fading on its own. Nothing ever came of it. That happened regularly for about 3 months. And it came to be a standing order at the lab where that we would call the doctor and say it's happening again. And she would say, I'm calling the lab, get over there. We need to get a blood panel while this is happening. We had so much testing done with hematologists and oncologists, and everything always came back normal except his white blood cell counts were always a little higher than normal. Around 6 months, we had done like the more intensive baby shots. We do a slower schedule than normal. We kind of went with that gut feeling that he was vulnerable, and we went slower than normal with the shots, but we still, like every 30 days, we're going in for another shot because we still wanted to be diligent to get the necessary things without overwhelming his obviously sensitive system. But at 6 months, he had gotten a lot of the really important ones, so we took a little bit of a break from the constant cycle of shots. And that's when the petechiae stopped happening. However, around 8 months, he started getting ear infections, like constant. He would get an ear infection. It would go from nothing to screaming and bursting eardrums in 24 hours. He would be on antibiotics, do a whole course, go back to the pediatrician. She'd say, yes, his ears are clear. Less than a week later, same thing. After the 4th round of that, we took him to the chiropractor. I said, something's got to change, something's got to give. So we took him to the chiropractor, and he adjusted his neck and said it was likely an issue with his eustachian tubes. So he showed us how to do eustachian tube massage, because the eustachian tube is what drains the ears from the inside. It drains the fluid from the ears down into the throat. And there are many things that can cause those to not drain properly, but the most common is they're more like a muscle and they'll sort of spasm or kink. So the massage can smooth them out, and having the neck properly aligned helps prevent those things from happening. And it did the trick. He's not had an ear infection since. But our chiropractor was a wonderful naturopathic family practitioner. And he talked to us, you know, with the whole big picture with our son. It sounds like something's going on with his immune system. Let's start in the gut. And around that time is when we started solids, because we do baby-led weaning and we watch for the physiological signs of readiness for baby-led weaning, like the tongue thrust reflex being gone, and the pincer grip, and the sitting up unassisted, and things of that nature. When we started, so we started very cautiously with the introducing solids, and the list of what he was allergic to just started racking up. Like raisins and grapes, apples, but not applesauce, which led us to believe it could be a histamine reaction because of the apple peel. tomatoes, potatoes, like the whole nightshade family seemed to bother him and give him like hives on his face. The one time he tried a tiny bite of eggplant, like I'm talking smaller than a pencil eraser, put it in his mouth, he spit it out, and within a minute, the drool path down his chin where he had spit it out was covered in hives. And he wouldn't eat anything the rest of the day. The doctor said later he probably had some hives inside his mouth we couldn't see, and that was causing him discomfort, which is why he didn't want to eat or drink. We were really careful that first winter, and I'm grateful that we kind of had that heads up going into the first winter, because at 10 months, he got RSV, and it lasted for 6 weeks. It was terrible. He was on every medication he could be, and nothing made much of a difference. It just gave him terrible side effects. I've been using essential oils since my oldest was born, so they weren't foreign to me. But when he was about 11 months old is when I really dug in and said, okay, what in my home can I replace with these natural substances and use them to the best of their abilities to replace everything in my house that seems to be just irritating and inflaming this poor little guy's body. And at 14 months, he decided to send us for another loop. We went out to a restaurant to eat. We asked a million questions about the menu and then ended up just getting him a plain bowl of buttered noodles. The rest of us ate our meal, we got in the car, and as we were leaving, he picked up a crayon and started chewing on it. And it was about a 5-minute drive home. Halfway home, he started screaming. And it wasn't, it's just a cry a mom knows isn't, I'm tired, or I'm being a brat, or I'm sick of the car seat, or I'm just not happy right now. It was like, something is seriously wrong. As soon as we got home, I like whipped open the van door and looked at him, and he had like masses of huge purple, like lacy purple hives spreading from his mouth over his face. And he was like screaming and purple and red and bug-eyed. And I pulled him out of his seat and he was like sweating profusely. I ran inside. My husband had driven separately because we had met there to get lunch. I didn't know that he had stopped to get gas on the way home. Naturally, my cell phone was dead, but we got inside and I ripped his clothes off, like looking, was there a bee sting? Was it like, what was going on? And I watched as the hives just spread over his head, because he was a little blondie, and down his body, and just screamed. Eventually, my husband did get home and we got medical attention because I couldn't call 911 because my phone was dead. And that was his first anaphylactic reaction. We still don't know what it was to, and that is terrifying, to know something was killing your kid and you don't know what it was. Usually allergists won't see children until they're 3 years old, but at 14 months, our son went in and got the most extensive panel of allergy testing I have ever seen. And he came back allergic to eggs and borderline allergic to pork. The egg connection immediately went off in my head. And I told my chiropractor, and he said, the vaccines. If he's allergic to eggs and they are in vaccines and he was being injected with something inflaming his body on a regular basis, his body was kind of imploding with the petechiae and all the other issues. We got really serious about cleaning out our diet and trying to heal him from the inside out. We went completely clean. No refined sugar, only raw honey and real maple syrup. No dyes. None of his allergens, which we began to connect the dots, were like not only eggs, but all poultry meats. Pork made his guts bleed because one time he got something with bacon in it, and within hours was screaming and had blood in his diapers for days. We stayed away from all nightshades. We had very limited gluten. I began buying wheat berries and grinding my own flour to make all of our baked goods, and I cooked every single thing from scratch. That was not our lifestyle. before 3 years ago. But with that kind of nutrition and really heavy probiotics, he began doing better. He still would get every single germ that came around. Like anytime we were on anyone with the slightest sniffle, he would get profoundly ill. If the kids would get any kind of cold or a sniffle or a stomach bug or diarrhea or anything, he would get it to the max, and most of the time would end up hospitalized for a day to restabilize him. It was really clear that his immune system was trashed. It became really, really hard to go anywhere. I was terrified. Every time I'd go places, I would see like other people's kids. I'd hear somebody cough and I'd be like, don't breathe my child's airspace. And like clockwork, within 48 hours, he was really sick. And usually within 24 hours after that, we were on our way to the hospital for something. When I see your kid dripping with green boogers and hacking, and you didn't need to be at this play date, this is my baby. And I have literally watched him almost die so many times. But that is what led us to this holistic, clean eating kind of lifestyle. Is my kid's a medical mystery. He's never had a solid diagnosis of anything except a couple food allergies. And that is how our little medical mystery put us on the road to this clean eating, holistic lifestyle that we have today. He is almost 5 and he has not been hospitalized in 2 years as of next month. So not quite 2 years, but he still gets sick. He still gets every bug that goes around. We see the evidence that his body is healing from the inside out. He still has a lot of struggles. He has chronic headaches. He gets a lot of stomach aches and we can never figure out why. He is really afraid of eating a lot of foods because even though he can eat almost everything that used to be off limits for him, he's afraid that food is going to make him feel bad inside because he remembers feeling so bad after eating things at times. But in general, he's doing well. He's doing better than he was before. And we're really, really grateful for all the progress we've seen over the years as his body has continued to heal. He's a really funny, really crazy, really, really smart little 4-year-old guy, and we are so grateful that he is in our lives for so many reasons, but we're also so grateful for this healthier path that he's put us all on, because we all have seen incredible health benefits from cleaning out our diet and replacing our household items with natural things and getting the toxins out of our house. But that is what kind of put us on our path that we are on today. I hope that was interesting or insightful somehow. Please share this video with anyone who you think might find it useful. Give us a thumbs up, please, if you liked it, and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Bye-bye, friends.